I know that this will happen. So you have to be very mindful. That's why it's that authentic communication. You have to be very mindful of what you share and make sure that you share what can actually be delivered and happen.
Welcome to Process Pioneers, the show that takes a deep dive into the minds of decision makers, key influencers, and process experts who are pioneering the world of everything process. Welcome to the next episode of Process Pioneers. My name is Daniel Rayner. I'm the host of Process Pioneers, and in each of these episodes, I have the absolute privilege of sitting down with process specialists, practitioners, people that are, to be honest, anyone involved in an organization and an organizational change, there's going to be processes involved, whether you know it or not, whether you like it or not, from the senior leadership down to the frontline operational employees. Everyone's involved in a process. If you are joining us for the first time, a warm welcome to you. We've got a database, a library of over 160 episodes of fantastic conversations for you to go and glean from. And if you have been listening for some time, a warm welcome back. And if you could give us a rating or a review on whatever platform you're watching or listening to this on, that would be much appreciated. It's going to help us continue to get this message out to more people. But let's dive into today's conversation. Today, I have the absolute privilege of sitting down with Jethro Marsh. Now, Jethro is the head of enterprise and commercial at Hudson. He's also chief marketing officer for DG Sentinel, a not-for-profit dedicated to sharing unheard stories from around the world safely, and recently appointed to the position of director of the advisory council. And Jethro, in talking to you just before we got started, also heard that you got your start in the music realm, the music space. So I'm really excited and curious about that. But thank you so much for joining me.
Pleasure, Daniel. Great to be here. And bit of an eclectic start to my time, definitely.
So tell us, you studied music.
Yeah.
How did you go from studying music to now being heavily involved in organizational change?
So I'll do the canned history. At 7 years old, I'd grown up with Pink Floyd and the Stones, listening to all of that. And I love the guitar. So I went into my primary school and said, hey, I'd like to learn the guitar. And they said, really sorry, you can't learn the guitar because our guitar teacher's on maternity leave, UK school funding being what it is. But you can learn the violin with the cello teacher. And so I thought, well, I'd never really listened to any classical music before. So I thought, okay, I'm not particularly excited about that. Picked it up, fell in love with it. So fast forward, I was building my career and went to Michigan State to do my master's and studied with the amazing Walter Vidir. But also, unfortunately, during that year, as I was practicing a lot and so on, I developed a joint condition, which meant that I couldn't continue to play, which is a bit confronting. But as we were talking about just before the call, I don't think anyone, either forced to or through choice, I don't think anyone is going to end up working in exactly the same career all the way through their lives. So me being me, I dove headlong into another degree to try and translate my music into something slightly more academic, so people could believe I could spell and do all of that stuff. And just got myself started in an industry, in an area that I was passionate about from my music background. Musicians don't earn an awful lot of money, and they tend to have to hustle pretty hard to make their money, especially at the start of their career. And that's what I did. I built up this business of gigs and recording contracts and solo opportunities and teaching gigs and so on. So all of this side work to be able to pay for example, lessons, master classes, and also ultimately support me during my time in Michigan a little bit as well. And I really loved that customer engagement. I loved figuring out new ways of engaging with people, that growth, that change. And so when I had to stop playing, I thought to myself, well, what's some element of what I've built up, some elements of my career that I can bring forward? What's something that I can do a little bit more of that I actually quite enjoyed? And that was it. So into English Pen as an intern. At 24, I wasn't expecting to be an intern at 24. and then into FE News, which was a baptism of fire, but also awesome opportunity, and then just into the more standard corporate world, my long chain of very, very unsexy organizations.
I think it's fascinating hearing your journey and where you've come from, because I think you're right. I think a lot of people do stumble into different careers, different opportunities without really planning or foreseeing it, but stumble across something that they do have a passion for, or they find that they really enjoy. And I know we've had a bunch of people reach out and message me off the back of this podcast series saying, "Hey, I was an accountant, or I was doing this beforehand, and I watched your podcast on business process management and the value that understanding your business processes can bring, and now jumped sort of headfirst into this field, and I've been loving it ever since." And so, that's really great to hear, but it's awesome to hear your journey as well.
It's so empowering. Yeah.
Now, obviously, the last 4 years, 4 and a bit years, it's been quite a turbulent time, especially in the organization context and landscape. And I think that when it comes to organizational transformation or organizational change, more times than not, I would say it's probably reactive, quite reactive. Can you talk to us how do we, and it's a huge topic, but how do we take our organizations from a reactive approach to more of a proactive one?
That's a good question. Ooh, you hit me straight out the traps there. Look, you're absolutely right. An awful lot of organizational transformation is reactive. And I'm going to be a bit controversial here, because obviously in the narrative that we have nowadays, reactive bad, proactive good. Proactive means control. You're controlling the narrative. Reactive means you're doing what other people are triggering you to do. But then if we think of something like, for example, Agile and the application of the sprint process and and why that's so important, it's so important because we need to react to change. When we think of our strategy process, the days of having a strategy deck that then sits in a frame for 4 years and never gets touched, they're over. We can't do that anymore. We can have a vision and a mission and a long-term goals, but all of the strategic application and implementation needs to adapt quickly.
Right.
In terms of being proactive, I think you need that alignment in an organization between top down, because at the top they will have access and visibility of the different stakeholders who also have some skin in the game when it comes to a transformation initiative, because transformation is always scary, it's always change, and there's always risk involved. You can't have a risk-free transformation. Transformation typically happens in organizations where they see a horizon where not changing will actually entail more risk to the long-term viability of the organization. So you have that top-down approach where change has been identified and there are specific areas that need to be addressed right now. But then in terms of the building of those individual areas, you need to access the organization. So as you build your transformation strategy, you need to align top-down with bottom-up. You need the experts who are on the ground to be able to engage and build that with you. That's step one. Without that, you will have a completely disconnected transformation journey. And as I'm sure you'll have heard from other people on the podcast, it's very easy for organizations to separate. It's very easy for organizations to have a leadership team who are somewhat divorced from the reality of day-to-day operations, who don't fully embrace or understand what it actually means to do the job. I think another thing that organizations often do is look for someone to come in from outside with skills. And in all candor, an awful lot of the moves that I've had in my career, and by the way, your listeners are more than welcome to reach out and say, why on earth did you go there? But a lot of those moves have been at those points where organizations have either had some kind of high-level frame of strategic change, and then want to bring me in, or have identified that transformation is something that they need to look at, but they're not really sure where to start in that space. You should absolutely bring people in from outside, be open to external views, because ultimately external views, even in the development of that strategy, are so important. They're as important as having the views of the individuals who are within the organization, who are the experts, but they're also the experts in doing things exactly the way that they're done. You have to balance that. If you want to change, then change can't come from doing exactly what you've always done. You have to embrace the new and the different. The other important aspect for me, to be perfectly honest, in terms of being proactive, is to create the trust and to create the time to be able to do that. I think as we were talking about on the chat before, it's really important that if you're working bottom up and you're engaging your team and you're bringing people in and on that journey, that you're really transparent around what that journey represents and means, but you also are really open to creating a safe space for them to provide specific feedback, for them to engage properly. If you don't provide that safe space, then in any organization with hierarchy, you're quite likely to get people saying, yes, that's absolutely great to your face, and then wandering off to the side and having a different conversation. That won't help at all. And you need time. The Google example is a great example that's often cited of, the percentage of your time deployed on something completely different. Something that my team at Fuji Xerox in Australia managed to come together to do in especially towards the end of my time there, was something called a No More BAU session. And it was just this opportunity outside of a big transformation for the team to come together in a safe space once every couple of weeks and chuck an idea on the table. If you get enough votes to try that idea, and if it's not going to break the business, so, sensible, it's not, fly to Mars. But if it's an idea of something specific that we can try and do a bit differently and we can measure the impact, you get enough votes around the table so you're engaging with your peers and you're building consensus, we'll try it. And if it doesn't work, that's fine. We'll try something else or we'll amend it. And if it does work, excellent. We've tried something. But that really gets, on a tactical day-to-day level, that gets that transformation engine flowing, and it gets people connected to the reality of change. And that's something proactive that people can do, even in an environment where, the transformation journey is a 3 to 5 year lens.
No, that's great. You can really see why it needs to be connected from that top down. You've got the senior leaders establishing the strategic objectives and the direction and the vision, but then you've got all of these experts that are in their roles, that they are experts for a reason. They know their field, their pocket of the organization more likely better than anyone else. How easy is it to bring them on board? Like, I love it's almost sounds like an idea incubator where you can engage these people, and it sounds very fun and exciting. Is it as easy in practice to make it happen? Okay.
No, incredibly hard. If I think of an example, when we first did this at Fuji Xerox, it was very difficult to get people initially bought in, because people were quite set in their roles. It's a large organization, right? So it's difficult to, everyone's responsible for a very specific bit, and then they hand it off. But you need to identify the quick win. You need to identify one pilot project that you can try, and then you get people's buy-in. People buy into change and journeys of change when they see benefit accrued from the change that is specific to their area. Another example from ages ago, when I was at Temenos, and we were wanting to experiment with social media, core banking technology. And bear in mind, my hairline will probably tell you I'm not the youngest chap in the room, but this was back in 2011, and we were looking at using social media as a way of engaging with our audience and bringing them to webinars and thought leadership events. We've never tried it before, but I knew that those individuals were on LinkedIn. I knew that this was a new channel that we should be exploring as part of our integrated digital strategy. So I identified one product manager who was willing to test it on one event. And I did. And we filled up his registration list from LinkedIn and Twitter within about a day. And all of a sudden, couldn't keep up with demand. All of a sudden, social was the thing that we had to do as part of every single initiative. So you just need to identify the quick win, one quick win. At Fuji Xerox, it was an idea for bringing down barriers to customers. Can we remove these couple of things that we're asking for customers before they can engage with us? Well, we'll try it. And if it has a significant improvement in our performance, then we'll keep it. And the fact that we tried it and it had that improvement and then we kept it really built that sense of trust. But getting to that sense of trust, that takes work, and it's not always easy.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I think the getting those wins, those quick wins, are so important. And I think would you say I guess in some cases the idea may not be a minimum viable product. In a sense, it's maybe too big in the sense that it's going to take too long. That you stand to risk people getting demotivated and not actually seeing the full results. So I guess for whatever idea or initiative there is, it's about boiling it down to maybe the smallest, or maybe not necessarily the smallest degree, but a small degree so that you can actually track, measure, monitor, and see results in the short term.
Exactly. And you can apply different frameworks to this. You could say agile, or you could apply the 7 habits of highly effective people principles with, start with the end in mind and then first things first. So all of these things, but basically it's the same as with anything. If you're saving for a mortgage, which is, or a deposit, which is always a fun thing to do when interest rates are going up. Thank you, RBA. But if you're saving for that deposit, you've got a goal of, I don't know, 150 grand. You're not going to save 150 grand today, but you might today say, okay, so for the rest of this month, I'm going to buy 1 coffee a day instead of 2. So that, in Sydney it's 650, sadly, but that's 650 a day that you can not spend, which means that's money you can put to savings. So you have your long-term goal, but then you chunk it down. And then, did I hit my target? Yes, no. So is, not buying a coffee each day, is that practical? Well, if at the end of those 2 weeks you find actually that's not practical, because it's actually something that I find value in, having a coffee, say, once every other day. Okay, so that's the target. You've learned. So your sprint is applied, you've tested the story, you achieved parts of it, so your new protocol is implemented. What are you going to try next? But break it down to measurable things will demonstrate the return and demonstrate that progress. I think the other thing that's really important to remember here, I love transformation. I really do. It's one of the things that gets you out of bed. Well, gets me out of bed on those mornings where you stub your toe and it's raining outside and you're not looking forward to commuting on the train and the wind's up and your coffee's cold, or someone bumps into you, or everything in the world is just going wrong for you on that morning. One of the things that keeps me going and keeps me energized is that notion that I can try and do something a bit different today. I can push it a little bit further. I can change gear. I'm looking for those opportunities. That's me. But you also, as a leader, and this is really important for all those leaders of change or managers of teams who are going through change or want to drive change, everyone needs to remember that you can be passionate about change and you can get the value of change, but there's a whole heap of people who are sitting there who have been doing this in the current way or in the old way for a while. They're wedded to it. It's tied to their identity. They know how to do it, so they're secure in it. They know how to perform in that role. They need a within. They need the what's in it for them. So they need that sense of security, and they need to understand the benefit. And that's where, for example, you can bring some of them on side by involving them in those small, specific transformation projects to see that change can be growth rather than just change.
Yeah, great. And you mentioned there talking about progress and like tracking the progress of the transformation or tracking the return of the transformation. Is it always about profit?
No, absolutely not. I think it's often partially motivated by profit. And look, you can be transparent. Be transparent with the organization. If the driving force is for the organization to be more efficient and therefore more profitable, then it doesn't necessarily mean, and this is the association for a lot of people, transformation project means 20 heads or 10 heads or whatever it might be. It's not always that. It could well be that in this space we have we have an organization of 100 people, and these 100 people at the moment are delivering $50 million, for example. But we believe through transformation, through a better operating structure, through organizational redesign, through upskilling, through automation, we believe through all of these things, we can increase that to 60 million. It might not be reduce 100 to 90. It might be keep 100, but motivated, engaged, doing more because we're taking away some of the admin steps, we're streamlining processes. So it's important to be really transparent with the organization around the purpose of transformation. But a transformation that doesn't have the needs of the customer at the heart will undoubtedly fail. Because ultimately, the customer is the person who's giving that company of 100 staff the $50 million. And if you're transforming and the customer sees no benefits in it, then why would they give you any more money for it?
Yes. Now, when I guess embarking on a transformation with the customer in mind, some transformations, as we were saying a little bit earlier, you want to go for those quick wins. You get those quick wins, you celebrate those wins, you get more buy-in. Maybe you embark on longer transformations. How do you keep the wider team on board and aligned when over a longer sort of transformational period?
I like the phrase authentic communication because, again, in organizations, people recognize that if you're a senior leader, you can't share everything. There are certain things that you just can't share because they're commercial incompetence or because they may not have been confirmed yet. So the thing I try and hold true to is authentic communication. And some of my teams will say I say this ad nauseum, but I always commit to sharing the information that I can as soon as I can, as openly and transparently as I can. Committing to things that I know I can commit to. So not committing to things that I just think are going to make a more pleasant conversation, and not committing to things that I don't know are incredibly likely to happen. Because ultimately you have to recognize that as a leader, you have that level of, I guess, implied authority and also implied knowledge. If people hear me say something about the organizational transformation, then there is that implied sense that I know that this will happen. So you have to be very mindful. That's why it's that authentic communication. You have to be very mindful of what you share and make sure that you share what can actually be delivered and happen.
Yes. And how, I guess, in a transformation, like obviously there's a lot happening, a lot of change, the potential for change fatigue, for potential for people to get decision fatigue, too many decisions to be made. So there's a lot moving, and whether it's moving with an agile approach or whatever it might be. How does governance play a role or play a piece in a transformational piece of work? Because obviously you want to see the results, you want to achieve the outcome as quickly and efficiently and on time and below budget as possible. How does governance fit into the picture? Is it important?
Yes, absolutely. Thinking about, for example, the transformation journey that Roche Diagnostics had started on when I joined. And led by Ali Roster, who, by the way, would be a great person to have on the podcast, and she's a great transformation leader. But I also want to give a shout out to the head of quality, legal, regulatory, and compliance there, Natasha O'Brien, who again had that governance lens on transformation, but not from and this is really important. Governance and that risk management is not about blocking a transformation. And Natasha, I think, is probably the best advocate and person to apply this that I've ever encountered in a similar role. She keeps the business and the customer at the heart of that application of a governance model. So it's governance to ensure quality. It's governance to ensure that we can say and do exactly what we say and do. It's governance to care for the people in the business. And look, transparently, applying that governance lens to an organization in transformation can be incredibly challenging, and it can be a thankless task because the people who are passionate about change may feel like, oh, this is going too slow now because of all of these steps, and the people who aren't passionate about change are probably looking at the governance person thinking, well, you're just on the transformation journey. So they're kind of caught in the middle.
Yes,
but it's incredibly important. Because the quality, again, keeping that customer in mind, you can't sacrifice the quality of what you do or how you do it for the sake of a transformation tick box.
Yes. Yeah. That's so good. I think quality or lack of quality can kill a brand, it can really damage a brand. So it doesn't matter how many units of whatever it is you're getting out there. If the quality is not up to scratch, then you probably don't have a long future. Yeah. But Jethro, I just want to thank you for sitting down with me, having this conversation. Pleasure. Obviously, we've sort of scraped the surface of some big topics there. And obviously in half an hour, we can only fit so very little into the conversation, but I feel like it's been a very interesting and exciting conversation. I'm sure it has been for our audience as well. Even if it's just to spark a new thought in someone's mind or get them thinking about organisational transformation slightly differently, I think that's a win out of these conversations. And I'm sure that we've left an audience there with many questions and many, what do I like? I'm excited. I'm interested in this topic. I think our organization can benefit a lot by, learning more about how we can sustainably execute transformation over, longer periods and actually adopt it and embed it as just part of the organizational culture. Where do these people go to learn more? Can they connect with you? Do you have resources that you could direct them to, or where should they go from here?
I mean, I think the first thing, yes, please do. Anyone can reach out to me. I love this stuff. I love this stuff. I'm happy to talk about it. I'm also happy to just listen and ask a couple of questions and be a sounding board. So please do reach out. I'm open to that. Love it. Outside of that, I think attending any meetups for like-minded people, and by like-minded I mean look at meetups or webinars where people are talking about transformation, change, about change journeys, about challenges in that space. I think reach out to other people who put comments in listening to this podcast, because again, like-minded, growth mindset, and there are more of us than you think. In terms of specific sources of information, there's so much information available online. The challenge, I think, is, and I think we were talking about this just before we came on, the challenge with the information that we consume in a theoretical sense or in an academic sense is it very rarely survives first contact with reality. So sure. I'd always advise, having the theoretical frameworks is great. Go talk to people who are living it, breathing it, and who have gone through it, because they're going to have a much stronger understanding of what it actually means on a Thursday morning.
Fantastic. Well, Jethro, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for joining me.
Total pleasure. Thanks, Dan.